Good evening. My name is Alan Sklar, and tonight we'll be taking a magical journey to a fairy tale world where nothing is quite as it seems. A world much like our own, where we might easily admire the beauty of a rose or enjoy the sparkle of a gemstone. But if we have the patience and wisdom to look beyond the surface, we can begin to see the true beauty that lies within. Before we begin our story, take a moment to relax your body and mind. Stretch out your arms and legs, letting go of any worries from the day. Allow your breath to deepen into long, slow inhales and soft, gentle exhales. Feel your body grow heavy as it snuggles down into your cozy bed. And when you're ready, allow your eyes to drift slowly closed. Now that you're all settled in, let's begin tonight's sleep story, Beauty and the Beast. Once upon a time, there was a good merchant with 3 lovely daughters whom he cared for very deeply. He spared no cost for their education and sent them to all sorts of teachers who instructed them in every subject and skill. The merchant's 2 younger daughters did not care much for their studies. They preferred to comb their golden hair and gaze at themselves in the mirror for hours on end. They put on extravagant airs and attended a different party every night. The merchant's eldest daughter, though, was quite different from her sisters. She spent her days reading books, pondering ideas, and learning all about the wonderful world. She refused all suitors, telling her father she was much too young to marry and would not even consider it before she had completed her studies. Further, she made many friends in town with her genuine, compassionate personality. Everyone admired her for the way she could always look at the bright side of things and see the positive in every moment. Wherever she went, she could turn frowns into smiles, tears into laughter, and mistakes into blessings. She had a knack for making the world a more beautiful place, and so everyone called her the Little Beauty. The family lived in a small country house, and each of them contributed to the household chores. The younger daughters barely helped out at all, for they were too lazy and prideful for hard work. They rolled out of bed late in the day, only to lounge around and groan about not having finer clothes and larger jewels. But Beauty rose every morning before dawn to tidy the house and cook breakfast for the family. It was her job to ready the household accounts, and she'd written so many calculations that she had to sharpen her pencil many times. After her work was finished, she would read her books, play the piano, and feed the wild horses on the meadow. Oh, how she treasured this simple life. Well, the merchant was secretly very proud of his eldest daughter, to say the least. He knew very well that Beauty outshone her sisters in her character as well as her mind. He admired her humility, creativity, and patience. Each night he would pat her head and say, "All will be well as long as I have my beauty." So the family lived quite peacefully until one day the merchant received news of an opportunity across the sea. His two younger daughters immediately fluttered about the cottage, flattering themselves with demands for fancy gowns and fashionable shoes and sparkling rings and all manner of silly possessions. But Beauty asked for nothing, for she thought that nothing could make her happier than her father's safe return. And when the merchant insisted that she receive a gift, Beauty simply replied, "Since you are so kind to think of me, father, perhaps you could bring me one single red rose, for none grow out here in the countryside, and I do so long for their sweet aroma." So they all bid the good merchant farewell, unaware of what was about to befall him. For as the merchant was taking a shortcut through a magic forest, he lost his way. Even worse, it began to rain, and the merchant was caught in the cold. He didn't know which way to turn. As if by a miracle, he saw in the distance an array of multicolored lights glimmering through the darkness. When he got up close, he saw that the lights came from a beautiful palace, with towers and turrets of delicate stained glass, illuminated from within, casting vast rainbows throughout the woodland. Well, the good merchant could hardly believe his luck. He was so relieved to have found a safe place to spend the stormy night. Upon entering the castle, the merchant peered this way and that, clearing his throat to signal his arrival to his hosts. But nobody came forth to welcome him. "I hope the owner of the house will excuse my presence," he thought, "and I will not be a bother to their hospitality." Wandering into the great hall, he found a crackling fire and a table laid with a great feast upon the finest china. As he was quite wet from the rain, he drew near the toasty fire to warm himself, and ate his fill of the delicious food. But the hours ticked away, and still no one came to show him to his room. So the good merchant roamed through the magnificent castle and explored several grand apartments with fancy furniture, until he came to a chamber which had an exceedingly soft bed. As he removed his boots and readied himself for sleep, he gazed through one of the colorful windows to view the palace grounds. But instead of rain and snow, he saw a most charming garden with the most delicate emerald vine reaching all the way up to his grasp. And at the end of that vine was one single red rose, so bright, so velvet, so perfect, that it almost glowed. Now, the merchant remembered his dear daughter's request to have a rose just like this, so he opened the window and plucked the flower from the vine. Immediately he heard behind him a soft gasp, almost like a rumble. Turning around, he saw something he could not quite understand. A great creature, with fur like a lion, but standing up on two legs like a man, wearing a luxurious coat of intricate embroidery. "Dear sir," grumbled the creature, "I have saved your life by receiving you into my castle. But in return, you have done me ill by stealing my rose, which I value beyond anything in the world. Tell me, why have you committed this grave misdeed?" The merchant could not speak. He was in such shock, not only because this creature spoke in such a sophisticated manner, but also because he had indeed taken something without permission. "My lord," the good merchant explained, "I ask for your forgiveness. Indeed, I had no intention to offend you by picking this rose. I have 3 daughters, you see, and my eldest, who asks nothing for herself, hoped for me to bring home a rose for her. And never in my life have I seen a rose as exquisite as this one. I do beg your forgiveness for this misunderstanding, and ask that you tell me how I might repay you." The creature now rose to his full height and towered over the merchant's head. His luxurious fur gleamed in the candlelight. "I am no lord, sir," replied the creature. "I am called Beast, and I respect you for your truthful confession. You say that you have 3 daughters, so I will forgive you, on the condition that one of them comes willingly to my castle to serve as my maid, for this house is empty and in need of care." Well, the merchant had no mind to give one of his daughters over to this animal, even if he did speak like a gentleman. But in his nervousness, the good merchant did another bad thing. He lied, and promised the beast that one of his daughters would return to the castle. Leaving the palace with much grief, the merchant made his way home. And when his children received him, instead of accepting their embraces with pleasure, he could only look on them with a frown. "Here, Beauty," he said, giving the great rose to his sweet daughter. "Take this rose and hear the story of what it cost your unhappy father." Then he related his whole adventure of the wonderful palace and of its strange master, with whom he'd made a terrible bargain. Well, his 2 youngest daughters immediately said all manner of unpleasant things to Beauty, for they blamed her for this predicament, and had no interest in becoming maids, even in a palace. Beauty, while concerned by this turn of events, did not shed a single tear, for she knew that worrying would not help the situation. So she made a suggestion to her father. "No one should have to endure this on my account," declared Beauty. "Since the creature will accept any one of your daughters, it is only fitting that I will deliver myself to be his servant. I am very happy to think that my daily chores will save your honor and be proof of my tender love for you." But the merchant would not hear of it, cradling his darling child in his arms. "I am touched by your offer, my dear Beauty, but I cannot allow it. I myself will return to the castle and live out the rest of my days as a servant there. My only regret is that I will not be able to take care of my girls." Well, the merchant and his daughters discussed their predicament at length, but it was no use. No one was willing to allow the others to meet this gloomy fate. So that night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Beauty wrapped her old coat around her shoulders, climbed atop her faithful steed, and set out in secret, galloping through the forest, destined for the palace of the beast. The horse, knowing the way, took the most direct road to the palace, and it wasn't long before they saw its luminous towers glowing in the distance. As Beauty entered the great hall, she found the table splendidly set with the finest silverware and delicious things to eat. "Perhaps the beast has a mind to fatten me before he eats me," she joked, as she sat down and enjoyed the feast. But as she spoke these words, she heard a deep murmur, and knew the beast had heard what she said. Right away, she was embarrassed and regretted making such a hurtful comment about someone she'd never even met. She looked around the great hall to express her apologies, but alas, she did not see a soul. And since she did seem to be all alone in the castle, she thought she might as well become familiar with her new home, which she could not help but admire. It was certainly an extravagant palace, with silk brocade upon the walls, lustrous mahogany furniture, and intricate paintings in every room. Soon she found a door, over which was written, "Beauty's Room," and when she peeked inside, she could hardly believe her eyes, for her bedroom was truly dazzling. There was a beautiful bed shaped like a sled, covered by a canopy of embroidered silk, a vanity with golden brushes and many little pots of creams and scented oils, and the closet simply overflowed with gowns of satin and lace, each with a hat to match. Oh, how her sisters would have loved this room! But Beauty herself was not too interested in these things. She regarded the trinkets and treasures with some amusement, but they could not hold her attention for long, for they were merely of the surface and did not have any depth. Several days passed like this, with Beauty wandering the great palace, without a soul to look upon or speak to. She found her decadent meals laid out in the grand hall upon ornate place settings. She was entertained with excellent concerts of music, though she never actually saw anybody playing any instruments. She could even have worn a different silk gown every day, with different shoes to match. But these things did not make Beauty happy. She chose to stay in her country clothes that still carried with them the comforting scent of home. And she was very lonely and quite idle, longing for a purpose, a way to be of use. But true to form, she said to herself, "Even if I was to be sad every day, it would not make anything better. So I must try to be happy by appreciating all the beautiful things I have in my new life. Try as she did, and she really did, she couldn't find a way to help out in this enchanted castle. She found a broom and dustbin, but could find no dust to sweep up. She found a mop and bucket, but couldn't find a single spill. She was skilled with the needle and thread, but not a single string was out of place on any rug or cushion. Sometimes she heard the great murmurs of her host as she ate her meals, and thought she saw glimpses of him passing through doorways and reflected in window panes. But never once did he reveal himself to her. Until one day, after she had been in the palace a whole month, there was a note pinned to her bedroom door, written in the most elegant handwriting. And when she touched it, she did not have to read the words, for it spoke to her in a clear voice like a bell. "Dear Beauty," the note said, "may I request the pleasure of your company this evening in the great library?" Beauty almost gasped, for she had never before seen a letter that spoke. She had also never seen a library in her daily explorations. "I wonder where this library is," she thought aloud. And the note answered back, "It's the third door down from the grand hall, Miss Beauty." "Well, I do thank you for these directions," Beauty replied, surprised and captivated by this conversation. So that evening Beauty combed her hair with one of the golden brushes, applied some lavender oil upon her dress, and found her way to the third doorway down the hall. Well, no wonder she had never noticed this room before, for it was halfway hidden behind an enormous tapestry of a young prince chasing a large beast. "Perhaps this beast is the creature my father spoke of," thought Beauty as she opened the door. And what was inside delighted her beyond measure. Her usual dinner was laid out, but this time it was in the middle of a glorious library. In truth, it wasn't a very large library compared to what is seen out in the world. But to Beauty, it was the most impressive collection of books she had ever laid eyes on. Rising high overhead were shelves upon shelves of drama and comedy, fiction and fantasy, every type of story she could possibly desire. "Why, it would take me ages to finish all these books," she exclaimed. "Just think of all the wonderful worlds I could explore." As Beauty ran her fingers along the shelves, she heard a great rumbling behind her. She knew it was time to meet her host, and she was not at all afraid, for he had never been unkind to her in all these many days. So when Beauty finally turned around and laid eyes upon the great beast, she was pleasantly surprised by the form of an elegant gentleman. He had a proud and regal bearing in a finely brushed suit, and his bright eyes shimmered like pools of deep water after a heavy rain. Of course, he was strangely covered by caramel-colored fur from head to toe. But at least the fur was clean and silky and brushed until it gleamed. When the beast spoke, it was with a deep, soothing voice, that carried gentleness behind its solemnity. "Have you come to me willingly? And have you everything you need?" the beast asked. Though she was uneasy, Beauty curtsied and nodded. "Yes, sir," she replied. "I thank you greatly for saving my father by giving him food and shelter on that stormy night. I shall repay this debt by keeping your house for as long as required." The creature continued, "I respect your sacrifice, Beauty, in giving up your own life to save your father's. This good act of yours shall not go unrewarded. Now, will you allow me to dine with you this evening?" "That is as you please, sir," answered Beauty. "No, Beauty," replied the beast. "Everything here is as you please. You need only tell me to leave, if my presence is troublesome, and you will not see me any more." So Beauty agreed to dine with her furry host, and as they ate their dinner, he showed her the utmost courtesy, and displayed the most elegant table manners. When the meal was finished, the beast suddenly said, "Tell me, miss, do you think me very ugly?" Beauty was taken aback. She did not know what to say, because she never liked to hurt anyone's feelings. But she also preferred to speak the truth. "I cannot tell a lie, sir," she confessed. "I have never seen another like you in all the world. But it's no error to be unusual, is it? I think you have a kind nature, and that is much more important." "I understand," replied the creature, for he knew that she could not find him beautiful. "I welcome you in my home, Beauty, and I hope you will treat it as your own. Everything here is yours, and I should be very sad if you were not happy." "You are very generous," answered Beauty, "and I feel grateful for your kindness. But I've found that your house does not need to be cleaned, and your meals do not need to be cooked. Won't you tell me what my purpose will be here?" As the beast paused, a low grumble rolled from his throat. "I have everything I could want in all the world, except for one thing, and that thing is a companion. Dear Beauty, would you consider being my wife?" Well, Beauty had nearly conquered her unease of this unusual creature, but now she wanted nothing more than to flee away. She allowed a long pause before she answered, as she was reluctant to hurt his pride. At last, however, she held her head high and answered simply and surely, "No, beast, I will not." Immediately the poor creature began to grumble, so that the whole palace echoed. But Beauty was not scared, because she could see the tears welling up in his eyes. Finally he said in a mournful voice, "Farewell, Beauty," and he left the room without looking back. When Beauty returned to her bedroom, she reflected on the events of the evening and felt a great deal of compassion for the poor beast. Alas, she thought, it cannot be easy to have such a tender heart and yet be so unsettling to the eye. It must be difficult to live your life all alone, without a single friend in the world. So Beauty spent many days contentedly in the palace. Every evening the beast took his dinner with her, and he talked with her very brightly, kindly, with a sharp mind, and even wit. What impressed Beauty most was that he had read every single book in the library, which must have taken him many years, and he understood countless subjects, having accumulated knowledge both deep and broad. And every day Beauty discovered another valuable quality in the creature that opened her heart to him, such as his compassion for all animals, great and small, his talent for music, for indeed he had been the one serenading her at dinner time, hidden behind the curtains, and his deep sense of honor, the most important quality in any person. Seeing the beast often also accustomed Beauty to his unusual look, so that she no longer felt discomfort at his beastly appearance. She even helped him comb his fur and untangle the parts he could not reach himself. Before long, Beauty noticed that she would wait for his visits with eager anticipation, for the beast never missed coming to see her even once. As time went on, she developed a deep affection for her friend and told him so one evening. "My dear beast, I am too sincere to make you believe that we could ever be more than friends, but I would like to honor our friendship by promising to stay by you the rest of my days. But before I stay here forever, I would like to visit my family one last time, so that I may hug them and let them know how much I love them." Tears welled up in the beast's eyes. "Alas," he uttered, "I love you with all my heart, and I am blessed that you will stay here with me as my best friend. When you are ready to return, just think about my name, and you will come back to this castle as if you had never left. But there is one condition," the beast concluded. He plucked a great rose from his emerald vine and placed it in Beauty's hair. "You must not stay away longer than the bloom lasts on this rose." And after she promised him, the beast snapped his fingers, and just like that, Beauty was sitting on her own bed in her old cottage. Well, her father almost sang with joy when he laid eyes on his daughter, and he held her tightly in his arms the rest of the night. When her sisters visited soon after, they were overwhelmed with joy, because the beast had sent along many trunks filled with glamorous gowns and shawls and hairpins covered with gold and diamonds. But otherwise, Beauty found that her sisters were, in fact, very unhappy. They had both married suitors who were extremely handsome, with great manicured mustaches on their chiseled faces. But these men were so fond of their own appearance that they had no interest at all in anything else. They complained about everything with their mouths puckered in sour expressions. They could not discuss literature, nor science, nor any subject in the world beyond their own needs and wishes. Worst of all, they did not treat the good merchant well at all, and dismissed him as a simple old man. They possessed unkind hearts, and did nothing to make the world a better place. So Beauty observed all this with great sadness, and her time in the cottage only caused her to miss her dear friend, the beast, all the more. She reflected upon her choices with regret. I must be a very silly girl, she thought, to act so unkindly to someone who has so many wonderful and rare qualities. I certainly wouldn't like to be in the shoes of my sisters. They have chosen husbands who are beautiful to the eye, but on the inside are neither intelligent, nor generous, nor virtuous in any way. My beast has all the characteristics of a fine gentleman, and I have the highest gratitude and esteem for him. Isn't it better to choose a man of noble heart than one with a fine face? So Beauty thought about this long and hard as she strolled through the meadow, feeding the wild horses and dipping her toes in the cool streams. One day, when her sisters had tried on every gown and adorned themselves with every bauble, Beauty decided it was time for her to go back to her companion, who understood her better than anyone in the world. She closed her eyes and thought of her loving beast, wishing to be back in the palace with him. But when she opened her eyes, she was still sitting in the cottage as before. Then she remembered the final rule. She had forgotten that she was supposed to return to the beast before the bloom had faded from the great rose. Reaching into her hair, she found the rose had already wilted, and its dry petals crumbled through her fingers. Well, Beauty simply couldn't wait to be back with her friend again. So she traveled back to the beast's castle on her own. She smiled broadly, overjoyed with relief when she saw the gleaming turrets through the trees. Eager to see her beast, she hurried to the library to find him. But no beast appeared. She opened every door of the castle, searching for him, but she could not find him anywhere. Finally, she went into the garden, to the great vine upon which the enchanted roses bloomed. And there she found her poor beast, stretched out on the ground with his eyes closed. Beauty threw herself beside him and pet his silky fur, beckoning him to awaken. At the sound of her voice, the beast fluttered open his eyes and said in a heartbroken growl, "You forgot your promise, dear Beauty, and have left me to live out my years in loneliness. Though my heart is good, you still consider me a monster. No, dear beast, Beauty confessed. There are many who deserve that name more than you. I see now that I cannot live without my sweet friend, and I could never leave you alone one day in all your life. I prefer you just as you are, she said, over those who are beautiful on the outside, but hide a cold and ungrateful heart. From this moment on, I give you my hand, and swear to be none but yours, as your loving wife. And Beauty had hardly spoken these words when she saw the palace sparkle with starlight. Music filled the night sky, and fragrant flowers blossomed in the air. Now she saw the beast as her dear companion, not some fearsome creature. And to her great surprise, the beast disappeared, and she saw, standing before her, the loveliest prince she had ever seen. And the prince held her little hand in his, and said, "My dear Beauty, now my story can be told. An enchantress had condemned me to the shape of a beast, until a worthy woman with a kind heart and keen mind should see through my ghastly appearance to my loving nature. You have chosen virtue over beauty, and kindness over riches, and thus you were generous enough to be won over by the strength of my character. You have broken the curse upon my crown, and I've returned to my true form." Upon hearing these words, Beauty was overjoyed, for she was already satisfied to be with her dear friend as a beast, who loved her with all his heart. And whether the beast was truly a prince, or whether love had simply transformed him in Beauty's eyes, we will never know, nor is it of much importance. For beauty is in the eye of the beholder, to be understood by no one other than he who chooses to see it. The beast plucked a great rose from his vine, and pinned it to Beauty's fine hair. And among the music and flowers, the books and friendship, the two sweet companions lived on, hand in hand, happily ever after.